Hello. The following is example 2 in your notes for chapter 2, section 3. We want to give the domain and range of each relation. We want to tell whether the relation defines a function. If we look at A, we notice that it's pretty much what we did on example 1. So let's decide if it's a function or not first. The first thing we want to look at are the domain and range. So for the domain we have 3, 4, 4, and 6. Well, the only one we really care about here is the domain. So 3, 4, 4, and 6 tell us whether or not it's a function, because the 4 repeats. That tells me that it is not a function. Therefore, I will write down that it is not a function. That also allows me to write down the domain. The domain 3, 4, 6. So 3, 4, 6. Remember, do not repeat any of the numbers. Now look at the range. The range, -1, 2, 5, and 8, come from the y's. -1, 2, 5, and 8. So your range is -1, 2, 5, 8. Now let's look at B. B is kind of a bubble, and it allows you to see in a bit of a different fashion exactly what we're seeing on A, just in a different manner. So if you look at this, the first bubble are the X values and the second bubble are the Y values. The way that you can see this is that if you look at the arrow here, only one of the arrows, if you look at the arrow here, the head is pointing to the 100. In other words, it starts at the 4 and goes to the 100, which means 4 corresponds to 100. That means that this bubble are the X values and this bubble are the Y values. Now I need to determine if this is a function or not. Ask yourself yes or no. If you said yes, you're correct, and here's why. The 4, the 6, the 7, and the -3 are your X values. How many arrows are coming from each one of the numbers? Just one. Because of that, each X value corresponds to only one Y value. Yes, the 6 and 7 are corresponding to the same number, but that's fine. As long as there's one number that this 6 is corresponding to, and one number that the 7 is corresponding to, you're fine. That means that this is a function. Therefore, yes, it is a function. Now let's look at the domain and range. The domain comes from the X values, so it's just all those values. So the domain here is 4, 6, 7, and -3. And the range will come from the Y values. So the range is 100, 200, and 300. Now do you see what I did on the domain? 4, 6, 7, and -3. That's not technically in numerical order, but because we're working with sets, the order doesn't actually matter. It's just something we like to see. So 4, 6, 7, and -3 is correct. It's just not in numerical order. Look at C. C is simply a table of values, so you can easily see your X values and you can easily see your Y values. Is this a function? If you said yes, then you're correct, because this -5 corresponds to the 2, the 0 corresponds to the 2, and the 5 corresponds to the 2. Each of these X values corresponds only to one Y value. In other words, the X's are not repeating themselves. So in other words, yes, this is a function. Now let's look at the domain. The domain are simply all the X values, which in this case is -5, 0, and 5. and the range is all of the y values. In this case, there's only a single number, 2. Let's look at B real quick. I just want to go back here. Notice that if there was an extra arrow here, and let's say that this arrow started at 4 and went all the way down to 300 with the arrow there, this would no longer be a function, because the 4 would correspond to both the 100 and the 300 at the same time. It would just be a relation, that's all. Notice that the domain and range would not change because we still have the same x values and the same y values. So because of that, everything else would be the same, just that this here would say, no, it's not a function.